A freelance journalist reports that ICE offered her a job after a 6-minute interview and inadequate vetting. The piece is now raising some questions about ICE's recruitment process. Slate reporter Laura Jedeed details applying for ICE in a piece titled, quote, "You've heard about who ICE is recruiting. The truth is far worse. I'm the proof." In her report, she says after a very short application process, she was hired, but DHS refutes those claims. The Department of Homeland Security responded to the story in an ex-post writing, quote, "This is such a lazy lie. This individual was never offered a job at ICE. Applicants may receive a tentative selection letter following their initial application and interview. That is not a job offer. It just means they are invited to submit information for review similar to any other applicant." The freelance journalist behind this story, Laura Jedeed, is here to break down this story. She's also a Substack writer at firewalledmedia.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
So what's interesting about your story, and I want you to take us through the process step by step, was that you are a U.S. Army veteran. You served in the U.S. military. You served in Afghanistan. You were part of the 82nd Airborne Division. So typically, police officers and people with former military experience are who ICE is looking to recruit. But in addition to that, in your background, it's very easy to Google you and find out that you are anti-President Trump, you are anti-the MAGA movement, you are anti-ICE, and you've also, and you detailed this in your piece, you once in a while smoke marijuana, right? And so and that's part of the vetting process they do. You have to take a drug test. So now knowing all of that about you and your background, walk us through why you wanted to do the story and how ultimately it developed for you.
Yeah, well, the intent was never to become hired. The intent was simply to write about an ICE expo that happened in Arlington, Texas in August, which was an expedited on-the-spot hiring event. And I thought the best way to report on that would be to submit a resume and go through the initial interview process. That's as far as I expected it to go, for all of the reasons you just mentioned. I'm very Googleable, and I do not make my opinion on ICE subtle. I'm a journalist. I'm also an American patriot, and I think what ICE is doing is anti-American. So I expected them to find that and to have that be the end of my application process. To my surprise, they did send a tentative selection letter, as DHS says, but that's not all they did. I didn't respond to the tentative selection letter. I did not fill out any of the paperwork they sent. And yet, as you could see on that video that you posted before you showed DHS's response, the portal, when I logged in a month later, showed that I had a final offer and an EOD date, that's entry on duty, of September 30th. By the time I checked this, that was October 3rd. So I had apparently I had been entered into ICE's system for 3 days. And my background check on this website was listed as completed as of October 6th. And, it's very funny that I got hired by ICE with my opinions, but it's not funny when you ask how many other people have had this glitch. How widespread is this? And frankly, it's astounding to me that DHS isn't concerned. In any other time, I think this would launch an investigation. This is a security issue. Even if you support what ICE is doing, surely you want ICE officers who are masked with guns in our streets to be vetted for us to at least know who they are. I'm not sure ICE knows who they are.
ICE, as you mentioned and as we mentioned earlier, denies your reporting. They say you were never hired. You only got the tentative offer letter. What's your response to their defense?
Look at the video. I posted the video of the portal that very clearly says that I have a final offer and has an entry on duty date. They have not responded to that video. And I would love it if they would. I asked them for comment before the story. I sent them that video before the story, never heard back. I posted the video in response. It's had 7 million views on X. And no response from DHS. And the reason is the reason that they are doing they lie. They lie constantly. You can't trust anything they say. They'll say something, and 5 hours later, a video will come out completely disproving it. Same here. And it's shameful, honestly, that they won't respond to what I think is pretty serious proof. Look, if they can prove me wrong, I'd be very happy. I don't like that this happened, but they don't have any proof to offer.
The other thing that I found interesting, Laura, and this may be of also interest to people who are wondering about the recruitment efforts around ICE, is that when you attended at Expo, you sort of write that you perhaps expected that there would be a lot of people there because they do offer some really I think, appealing and attractive financial incentives. But when you got there, just detail what you saw, the video that was running, some of the questions that were asked, and sort of the demographic makeup of the people who were applying when you got to that expo in Texas.
Absolutely. Well, we were all supposed to sign up for a specific time slot, which is usually what you do when you expect a large crowd to show up so that you don't have everyone showing up all at once. Well, I showed up for my time slot at 9 a.m., which seems like it would be a pretty popular one. No line to get through security. No line to get into the venue with, by producing the ticket. 6 people ahead of me in line for an interview that took all of 6 minutes. They asked me my name, date of birth, how long I served in the military, was I retired, separated, where did I want to be stationed. That was about it. And after that, I hung out in the esports arena where they were playing this propaganda video on loop, just showing ICE agents, busting into doors. I think it might have been HSI, actually, but, one of those organizations just, busting into doors and doing cool guy stuff just on loop over and over and over again. The demographics in the room, I don't think there were more than 150 people waiting in this rather large auditorium at any point in time while I was there. Demographically, very male. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. About an even split, I would say, between white people and Hispanic people, with, a few people of other races to kind of round it out.
Laura, talk to us a bit about the paperwork that you were asked to submit that you never submitted. So you, according to your reporting, were given a job despite having not submitted paperwork. What was the paperwork that you were supposed to submit that you didn't?
I mean, a lot of really very normal things that I would expect to need to submit. There is an affidavit that I've never been convicted of a domestic violence crime. There was basic medical information. There was a background check form just with basic information about me, because you do need somewhere to start to run a background check. Stuff like that, a self-assessment for physical training. I believe there's also a medical assessment that I needed to get filled out on my own. Again, all this was very normal. This is the reason the DHS is highlighting the tentative selection letter is because that's the last normal thing that happened in this process. I filled out none of that paperwork. And yet, as you can see on that ICE portal, very clearly says final offer and EOD date. If that means something else, I do wish they'd say so. I wish they would explain it.
Yeah, it said, you write that in your reporting, the helpful pop-up appeared, quote, your EOD has occurred. Welcome to ICE. And again, I just want to point out, because I said it, but I want to be sure I had it. You live in New York. New York, you are legally allowed to smoke marijuana. When you got that application, that follow-up, you write in the piece that you'd smoked some weed. You didn't expect, you thought that would be something that they would flag. Because of the drug test.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect. I don't personally have a problem, obviously, with cannabis use. It's completely legal where I live. But I did expect that to be something of an issue, and I never heard about it, so.
Wow. And finally, Laura, I guess you, at the end of your piece, you write why you decided to do this, the motivation behind this. And again, we pointed out that you are against President Trump, against his policies, against ICE. But you did say, and if this is a glitch, if this is something that you just somehow happen to slip through the cracks, how many others have slipped through the cracks? You write, what else might be missing? How many convicted domestic abusers, I'm quoting you here, are being given guns and sent into other people's homes? How many people with ties to white supremacist organizations are indiscriminately targeting minorities on principle, regardless of immigration status? And it details that. So I just want you to sort of clarify that for people who are watching who may have not read your article. Ultimately, your motivation for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, again, in the beginning, this was simply to cover an ICE hiring event. But by the end of it, it was definitely something else. We should care about the identities of the people who are in our streets with masks and guns, who, according to Vice President Jedeed Vance, have absolute immunity. Now, legally speaking, that's not true, but they do de facto have it, since the Department of Justice has made it very clear they don't plan to prosecute anyone for anything they do. So if we're going to give these kinds of people this kind of power, which, for the record, I don't think we should. I think it's anti-American to do that. But at least we should know who they are. At least ICE should know who they are. We should make sure that these people are of a caliber where we can trust them to do this, which, again, I don't think it should be happening at all. But I feel like it should be a bipartisan consensus that they should be vetted in some way, and that we should be sure they are vetted, and that DHS should investigate this to make sure.
All right, Laura Jedeed, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your reporting with us. We appreciate it. Again, we should point out that the Department of Homeland Security responded to the Laura story, and they wrote, quote, this is such a lazy lie. This individual was never offered a job at ICE.
All right.
Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.